I need it! I need it! Let's go!
Turks, Cenk Kasparian with you guys. So what a wild day. We got hearings on top of hearings. We got Kash Patel, we got Tulsi Gabbard, we got Bobby Kennedy Jr. On top of that, we got Trump being preposterously wrong, but surprisingly correct in different cases. What is going on? There are two stories in this lineup that actually shocked me. And I'm curious to see if they'll shock you. We'll probably do a poll on it. We'll have some fun with it, even though, of course, as usual, there's plenty of bad news today. All right, Casper, how you feeling?
Terrible. I feel bad. I'm sick. I've been sick for like a month, and I'm sick of it. But anyway, let's get to the news.
Yeah,
starting
that makes
with
sense. All right, yeah. God bless. I'll pick it up for you. Okay. Okay. I got energies. All right. What's the stories?
Well, I'm sure everyone has heard about a midair collision in Washington, D.C., so let's talk about what happened.
You can see to the left, there's a plane that looks like coming in. There's a brighter light. And right there, you'll see that horrific fireball.
67 people have tragically died as the result of a mid-air collision between an American Airlines flight and a military Black Hawk helicopter. The mid-air collision happened right near Washington, D.C. at the Reagan National Airport, and it took place just as the American Airlines flight was moments away from landing. There are no survivors, and currently authorities are engaging in an effort to find the bodies of those who were on the flights. Now, a major commercial airline crash in the United States actually has not happened since 2009 when the collision occurred in Buffalo, New York. So this is not a common occurrence on US soil. Among those on the American Airlines flight were members of the US figure skating, several members of our skating community, according to a statement from US figure skating, were sadly aboard American Airlines flight 5242. These athletes, coaches, and family members were returning home from the National Development Camp held in conjunction with the US Figure Skating Championships in Wichita, Kansas. We are devastated by the unspeakable tragedy and hold the victims' families closely in our hearts. Russia also announced that 2 Russian figure skaters were also aboard that American Airlines flight, which was headed to Washington, D.C. It was supposed to land there, and it was traveling from Wichita, Kansas. Now, what is the government saying about this? What do we know so far? Well, newly appointed Secretary of Transportation Sam Duffy said the midair collision Wednesday night between a regional Sean Duffy, the mid-air collision Wednesday night between a regional American Airlines passenger jet and a Black Hawk military helicopter over the Potomac River near Washington, D.C. was absolutely preventable, which is an interesting thing to say because we don't know what went wrong yet. And I want to be clear about that. I mean, the investigation is ongoing. This crash happened on Wednesday night. So to say that it's absolutely preventable, maybe that's absolutely true, but we don't know what happened. I mean, maybe the pilot suffered some sort of medical emergency and it wasn't preventable. So we have to wait and see. I want to be clear about that. It was also a clear night, so weather can't be blamed for the collision. At the time of the crash, the water temperatures in the Potomac River was approximately 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which is part of the reason why, the authorities do not believe a single person survived as a result of this collision. Sean Duffy continues to say, obviously, it is not standard to have aircraft collide. I want to be clear on that. The flight paths that were being flown from the military and from American, that was not unusual for what happens in the DC airspace, meaning, those flights those flight patterns are not unusual. And so he's kind of raising the question as to, if these aren't unusual flight patterns, what the hell happened here? This is preventable. That's where he's coming from. Now, the American Airlines flight came in from Wichita, Kansas, as I mentioned earlier, and was moments away from landing in Washington, D.C. American Airlines CEO stated that the captain of the flight had been flying for American Airlines regional carrier PSA Airlines for 6 years, and that the officer had been, the first officer on the flight had been with the airline for 2 years. Duffy said that the Black Hawk helicopter was on a training mission at the time of this crash, but he didn't really elaborate on that. And the helicopter was based in Virginia. So let's get to some of the recordings from the air traffic control. Those recordings have been released, and what you're about to hear are the statements or the moments from the air traffic control right before the crash happened. Take a listen.
Go around, climb, maintain 3,000. Black check 3, can you return to base? Black check 3, proceed directly to Glebe. I need you to land. I need you to land immediately. Can you go to Dallas for a few minutes? Can you go to Baltimore?
So from the recordings, or at least what we have heard from the released recordings so far, air traffic control was alert. They were trying to, give directions to the American Airlines flight. According to reporting, air traffic control is heard in the recording asking the crew of the military helicopter, which the controller referred to as Pat 25, if the American Airlines plane, which is identified as CRJ, was visible. 2 seconds later, ATC, that's air traffic control, provided instructions to the helicopter crew saying Pat 25 passed behind CRJ. 3 seconds later, the controller provides further instructions to the helicopter crew saying Pat 25 has aircraft in sight, maintain visual separation. So I give you that information because it's clear that air traffic control was alert, aware, paying attention to the situation based on what we know so far. When pressed by reporters for details about the communications between air traffic control and the helicopter, Sean Duffy said, "I would say the helicopter was aware there was a plane in the area." Duffy said it remains under investigation why the helicopter continued to fly into the path of the passenger plane. Cenk.
Okay, so look, we've got a poll on this where we're asking you who's at fault here, Trump, FAA, or DEI. Now, Trump brought that up, and you're gonna be pretty surprised at what we found in regards to that. I was shocked by it, actually. So we'll get to that in a second. On what Anna said so far, there was an instructor pilot on the helicopter, so that made me go, interesting. But then apparently the person who was flying already had 500 hours of experience, so that doesn't seem like it was the issue. And then, in terms of Sean Duffy and the Trump administration saying that it was preventable and that they're angry about it. Now, guys, it's a tragedy. All those folks died. Everybody knows that. We all, hate that happened, and our thoughts go to all the families. Now, this is going to get into politics. So when you turn to the political way of looking at it, it's actually smart political strategy. Again, you can get upset about it, but I want to explain it to you so you understand why you see the things that you see. So when administrations like the Biden administration come out like with the East Palestine disaster and they seem defensive and they don't give quite clear right answers, Karen Bass here with the wildfires, etc., it makes people think that they're trying to hide something and look like they're at fault. The Trump team, again, it doesn't go to the facts. It doesn't go to who actually did it and who was actually responsible, but just as a matter of strategy. Where the Trump team comes out and goes, we're angry about it, and it was preventable, and they're going on the offense. So it makes it look like it was somebody else's fault, and they're pissed on behalf of the citizens about it, and they're gonna get to the bottom of it. Politically speaking, that is 1,000 times better way to handle it. By the way, it might not be a better way to handle it at all when it comes to the truth and the reality so that we can fix it so no more people die. That's a completely different issue. And there, again, we have some surprising news for you guys.
Yeah, so all right, let's get into that news because Trump said some things that were honestly terrible considering the context of this tragedy. We have dozens of people who have died. And immediately jumping into a blame game is not helpful. But that is what happened. And I want to get into what his claims were, what's true, what's false. So let's get into it.
We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence.
President Donald Trump is catching a lot of heat for his opinions regarding what caused or what led to the mid-air collision between a military Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines flight. The mid-air collision happened near Washington, D.C., above the Potomac River, and it happened moments before the American Airlines flight was going to land. Dozens of people are now dead, as many as 67 individuals as a result of this mid-air collision. Obviously a tragedy, so immediately pivoting to politics is definitely in bad taste, especially since in that statement, you hear Donald Trump say, we don't know what the cause of this was. So why immediately jump into DEI hiring practices? But there is some truth to what he's saying about what was happening with hiring practices in regard to air traffic control prior to 2016, which I'm gonna get into details of in just a moment. But those practices ended in 2016. They ended nearly like 10 years ago. So to blame this on hiring practices, I don't think quite makes sense. And air traffic control, from what we have heard so far, seemed to be very alert as this mid-air collision was about to happen. The question is, why is it that the military helicopter didn't listen to the instructions from air traffic control? And here's a little taste of the audio that we're referring to.
Go around, climb, maintain 3000. Blackjack 3, can you return to base? Blackjack 3, proceed directly to Glebe. I need you to land. I need you to land immediately. Can you go to Dallas for a few minutes? Can you go to Baltimore?
And I also want to note that Donald Trump's press conference was riddled with all sorts of contradictions. In fact, it was so apparent that even Stuart Varney from Fox Business called it out. This is not some liberal, this is not some lefty, this is a conservative individual over at Fox News. And here's what he had to say immediately after Trump wrapped up his press conference.
The president came out and immediately blamed diversity. He blamed DEI and the diversity policies of the aviation administration he put blame here. He went out of his way to call Pete Buttigieg, the former transportation secretary, a disaster. He then said, look, he'd heard the tapes. The president had heard the tapes from the crash. He said the air traffic controller told the helicopter pilot to follow him in. That was follow in a commercial jetliner. Then there was a crash. It seems there's miscommunication, and the president did seem to be blaming air traffic control for this tragedy. The president was asked specifically, should Americans now feel safe to fly? And he specifically said yes, even though he had criticized the institution, the Federal Aviation Administration, for its diversity policies. Those policies are still in place. That personnel is still in place, carrying through into the future. And yet the president says it's okay. It's okay. We are safe. Do you see a contradiction in that?
I mean, I definitely see a contradiction. That doesn't mean everything that Trump said during the press conference was false. And I want to get into what he said that was accurate in just a minute. But I think that Stuart Varney makes a good point here. And I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, I mean, look, things are breaking down in such an interesting way where Fox News is admitting that Trump is wrong. We're about to show you something where Trump is right. So that's good. That means actual news is breaking out. And so on this though, this particular tragedy, let's be super clear. You just heard, with your own ears, and there's a lot more of it, where the air traffic control is doing the right job. They're telling them to avoid this path. They're very, very clear. So, there's very little things that we know about this crash. But the one thing we do know is that it seems that air traffic control was on top of it. Second of all, if you've ever watched the show, we've got 1,000 criticisms of Buttigieg. But how would you know that he was a disaster and this was his fault if you don't really know what caused the crash or really anything about it? So it's absurd. Here, I'll just put in one comment from a member. Cenk's left tricep fury on tyt.com said, when we need caring and reassuring voice, our president is as deplorable as possible. He is disgusting. And look, guys, even with the thing that we're about to tell you, is this the time to divide the country? Is this the time to try to make it seem like it was minorities' fault? No, so that is definitely not the right way to go. Nevertheless, there was a program at the FAA that was deeply troubling about 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, and this is the thing about Trump, right? This collision happened under his watch. So he's worried about the political consequences or ramifications of it, even before anyone knows any details about what went wrong. So he immediately goes into defensive mode. And as a result, he immediately picks something that has happened in the past that is not happening right now, because to his credit, he ended this practice, but he's using that previous practice to defend himself against any allegations that he's responsible for the midair collision. That was my read of it. So what he was referring to were the DEI hiring practices over at the FAA as it pertains to air traffic controllers. And about 2 years ago or a year ago, I came across a really interesting report about what was going on and how these practices ended in 2016 when Trump got elected for his first term. So the questionable hiring practices for air traffic controllers were part of an effort to diversify the profession. It's just the way that they tried to diversify the profession was an issue. It actually led to a class action lawsuit, and it's titled Brigida versus Department of Transportation. And through the discovery process of that lawsuit, we've learned a lot about the FAA's hiring practices. So let's get to those details. So previously, each candidate for air traffic control was required to pass this 8-hour cognitive test known as ATSAT. It was still considered a very effective way of hiring people for the job in 2013, but that actually soon changed because of the pressure to diversify the air traffic control workforce. At that point, the National Black Coalition of Federal Aviation Employees lobbied the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and the Congressional Black Caucus hard on this issue. Soon the FAA commissioned a barrier analysis that argued that the 8-hour cognitive test air traffic controller applicants took posed a barrier for Black candidates. So a barrier analysis by a pair of University of Maryland researchers concluded the FAA relied too heavily upon the Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative, which pre-qualified candidates who attended specialized schools and scored highly on the ATSAT aptitude test. So they recommended using a biographical questionnaire first to maximize diversity, eliminating the vast majority of candidates prior to any cognitive test taking place. And so as part of the revamp, the FAA disqualified several thousand applicants who had already gone through the Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative and required them to achieve a passing grade on this biographical assessment test. Also, I should note at the time that the FAA had decided to just completely pause the hiring of collegiate training initiative graduates pending the implementation of this biographical assessment, but they didn't inform the students about it. They didn't inform the graduates about it. And they even went on to take that 8-hour grueling cognitive test without any notice that it was worthless, that they weren't going to be chosen for it because there was a hiring freeze in order to implement this biographical assessment instead. But let's get to the biographical assessment questionnaire, because the questions that they asked were insane. They were insane. So in 2014, the FAA rolled out the new biographical questionnaire in line with the barrier analysis recommendation, designed so 90% or more of applicants would fail. The questionnaire was not mentioned and people could take it. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was not monitored, I should say. It wasn't monitored. People could take it at home. You didn't have to take it in like a secure location where someone's watching you. After all, you're just answering questions about your biography. The FAA adopted the new test developed by diversity consultants who were paid more than $1.5 million for their work without first studying its effectiveness, and discarded a pool of thousands of candidates who had already qualified under a standardized aptitude test that had been used for years. So the questionnaire, as I mentioned, was bizarre in how the importance of the answers were weighed. It literally used, in my opinion, it used some pretty gross anti-Black stereotypes and awarded points for having things like low scores or low grades in science classes, or having been unemployed for the previous 3 years. Discovery shows candidates who rated themselves as poor science students in high school and played varsity sports but were unemployed would score higher than candidates who were employed and had previous experience in air traffic control. It also gave high scores to people who said they were reluctant to express their views in a group, were more likely to be bothered by criticism of their performance, and had less than 3 years of training in air traffic control. Candidates scored 0 if they reported 5 or more years of formal training, and got lower scores if they said their previous supervisor would describe them as accomplishing tasks quickly, or if they said they started earning money after they were 18. And look, what's interesting is it was kind of designed. I mean, if you're answering this questionnaire, you would think like, I'm gonna flaunt my experience because that's gonna give me a higher score. But obviously the way that this was weighed actually punished the students, or the applicants, I should say, who said they had this experience. And so the majority of people would fail, but in the background of all of this happening, the very organization, the National Black Coalition of Federal Aviation Employees, were advising Black applicants on how to answer the questions in a way that would ensure that they would get hired. Okay, so notes from a meeting that they held in 2013 were shared as part of the discovery process for this lawsuit, and I want to read some of it to you. Okay, so they say, we are only concerned about African Americans, women of every ethnic background, and other minorities. Please ensure that you share this information with no one that is identified outside of that. This information is reserved for those classes of people we represent. This is to minimize competition. I mean, it's like super brazen in the documentation. And they were also advised to mention that they're members of the National Black Coalition of Federal Aviation Employees on the questionnaire to increase their chances of getting hired. But I want to be clear that things have changed since then. As Trump mentioned himself during his press conference today, the practice ended in 2016. In fact, in 2016, Congress passed Public Law 114190, which, among other things, banned the use of biographical assessments as a first-line hiring tool for air traffic controllers. People snubbed by the process filed dozens of lawsuits as a result, culminating in the class action suit now underway in Brigida versus Buttigieg. So initially, the lawsuit was titled Brigida versus Department of Transportation. It's now Brigida versus Buttigieg. The documents are public and available to anyone who wants to read them. But this was, in fact, an unfortunate hiring practice that did come to an end in 2016.
Yeah. So on Twitch, one of our members, Avenger Dragon 89, asks, wait, being bad at science was a good thing? Yes, so that's why this is over the top absurd. Look, guys, a lot of things are called DEI now, and some of them are, some of them aren't. And some of the practices could be great at bringing in more representation at different jobs and not lowering the standards at all. And some of the programs overreach, and this is a massive overreach. And not only does it affect competency and hurt, the population at large, but I would argue that it really hurts minorities to do insane stuff like this. So let me just clarify a couple of things, and then I'll tell you why I think it also hurts minorities. So first, I want you guys to be clear. In the old days, before this program was put into place, they would take the competency test and that would settle. And it was an 8-hour test, grueling, but we got you good qualified candidates. When they instituted this program, you take the biographical stuff first, and eliminate 90% of people no matter how well they did on the test. Then among the people who survived that, then they would look at the competency scores, which understandably were likely to be much, much lower at that point because of the pool that had been eliminated. A lot of the good people were eliminated. Why? Not based on race or anything, but based on this insanity of the standards. So yes, if science was your lowest score, you got an advantage. Insanity. If you had less experience, it was an advantage. If you were recently unemployed, it was an advantage. If you don't take, I mean, I know Anna listed it, but just think about it. You don't take criticism well. You're air traffic control. They have to be able to criticize you at like significantly and immediately. Get the freaking plane out of the way, right? This is not one of those things that you could have like, a discussion about it 12 days later. We gotta go. The other one was you don't speak out much. At air traffic control, you have to speak out. That's like issue number one, speak out, right? Why would you test for things that give you much worse competency? Because in their mind, and I would argue it's actually super ironically racist assumptions,
yep.
Right? They're like, oh, black people are probably gonna be bad at this job. So let's design a questionnaire to find the crappiest candidates so we can find more. No, who are these monsters who got paid $1.5 million? And now when you put this out into the world, and guys, it's an illegal case. We wouldn't bring it to you if it was some nonsense right-wing source that can't verify it, etc. There's no question about it. And all the as Anna read to you guys, the emails, the memos. I mean, for that organization that's trying to promote minorities in air traffic control, for them to say, hey, now remember guys, this is how you should answer. Already you're cheating. It's outrageous, right? And then don't tell the non-black, non-female candidates because it'll create competition for us. No, this is awful. And so now they'll take this, which is an aberration. Look, I don't know how much of an aberration it is in terms of like, now it makes me want to look at more of these DEI programs, how many were insane like this. But if of the things that I've seen, this is a rarity. But when you have this, well, even if you say, hey, Cenk, shh, don't, I mean, it's so embarrassing, don't tell anyone, right? And don't worry, mainstream media will cover it up too. You can't cover it up. Every right-wing show is talking about it. Every right-wing show talks about a lot of things that aren't true, right? But when this is true, it's gonna get out anyway. And if you're then lying about it or trying to cover it up, then that media source has even less credibility. And the next time you say something that is true, they go, yeah, right. These are the guys who denied that program, and it turns out that program was totally true. So don't do this. We don't, and overall, look, I've said this many times. I've said this for 20 straight years. I'm opposed to affirmative action. Not in the beginning. In the beginning, we desperately needed it. But if we never ever end affirmative action, this stuff like sets in like a cancer into people's way of thinking. Oh, minorities can't do the job. We need to adjust the standards. We need to do this. No, I'm a minority. I don't need your goddamn help. No, where we need the help, whether it's for African Americans or anywhere else, is at the beginning. Okay, so programs like Head Start are super important. Making sure that everybody gets a great education so they have equality of opportunity is super important, okay? But when you say at the end, oh yeah, like let's take my group. Oh, well, Muslims aren't good at this, although I don't know why. But by the way, there is a reason why. For example, that might be true of Turks in Germany. Why? Are Turks in Germany genetically different than me? No, because they're from a different socioeconomic background. So they had different education, different circumstances, etc. Would I want the Germans to cheat to allow more Turkish air traffic controllers? No, I would want them to educate them better, starting at the beginning. So this is an epic disaster in every way. Guys, it looks like air traffic control did the right thing. We can't quite tell yet. Let them do an investigation. I don't think this program had anything to do with this crash. But if you're hearing that Trump's a lunatic because he made this whole thing up and it's not true, in this case, it is true, and not that it's necessarily related to this crash.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, obviously, two very important hearings occurred today. So we're gonna get into those hearings featuring Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard when we return.
Okay, let me read a little bit of criticism and then I'll get to some of the things we got to talk about. Dark Skin Beach writes in on Super Chat, I'm not sure why this is even a discussion. The air traffic controller was white, as are most air traffic controllers. No problem, you could definitely say that. Why is it a discussion? Because Trump said that there was a program that tried to pick minorities based on competence, etc. And so everyone is saying that he's lying about that and it's totally not true and he's crazy. But it turns out he's not lying about that. It doesn't mean that it was related to this crash. But on the question of whether Trump is lying or not, it turns out in this case he's not. They also wrote in, you guys are ridiculous. This program hasn't been around for 9 years. And even then there were no crashes. But we did say that. That's exactly what we said. And so, but if this is where I ask folks, look, I love you guys, but what do you want us to do? Do you want us to tell you the program didn't exist when we know for a fact that it did? Do you want us to tell you that Trump is lying and crazy about that when he isn't lying about that? He might be crazy in other ways. In fact, we criticize him about 9 out of 10 things in how he handled that. So for those of you who say, no, I don't want to hear the truth, tell me that Trump is wrong, whether he's right or wrong. Yeah, we're never gonna do that. So you got to make a call on whether you're comfortable with that or not. Okay, look here, Ali, another criticism. A YouTube member, TYT should be ashamed of themselves. I know, the truth is so shameful. By reporting this non-relevant story, how is it not relevant to whether Trump was lying or not? Trump was not lying. He shouldn't have talked about it in the context of this story and all the other criticism that we had, but okay. So by reporting this non-relevant story helps feed into the narrative that minorities are unqualified. Disgusting. Ali, what I'm trying to tell you is doing dumbass programs like that feeds into the idea that minorities are not qualified. Supporting insane, ludicrous programs like that is a grave insult to me and other minorities, saying, oh, you guys are incompetent, so we have to cheat to lower the priorities for things for you. I don't want it. I want you to help people get equality of opportunity. If you say to me, no, Cenk, no, the left-wing position is to say minorities are unqualified and we should lower standards for them, you're not on the left wing. You're a person who believes in judging people based on race, etc. And I'm not in that camp. And I'm never gonna be in that camp. And that is not a left-wing camp. It just isn't. So you gotta make peace with yourself on whether you're left-wing or right-wing. And the right-wing position is to judge people based on race. The left-wing position is to not do that. Okay. Now, look, we love our members who support us and who appreciate the truth and who appreciate that we do an honest program. And all these theories about, oh, you guys are, if we're trying to get a right-wing audience, why did we just criticize Trump for 90% of what he just said? Makes no sense. No one's even trying to make sense among these critics, in my opinion. But I get it, it's emotional times. All right, I'll save some of the things for later. Asimov's prophet said, healing energies to you, Anna. Jerkeen said, feel better, Anna. Take some time if you need to. I'll double down on that. Shelby says, Anna, I think I have the same virus, lingering cold that hasn't subdued for weeks. Incredibly infuriating to wake up feeling the same way each morning. I would have preferred to just be really sick for a week. Over 9,000 says Trump's presidency didn't end in 2020, just. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
Kash Patel had his confirmation hearing today and it was explosive to say the least. Let's get to the highlights.
Are you familiar with Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what is it?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi.
That was an amazing moment from Kash Patel's confirmation hearing today. Of course, Kash Patel is President Donald Trump's pick or nominee for director of FBI. He testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and throughout the hearing, Patel pretty much evaded direct questions from Democratic senators. In some cases, when being questioned by Republican senators, he didn't evade, but he gave vague answers. Now, what you just saw was a question about alt-right streamer Stu Peters, whose show Patel did in fact appear on multiple times. So it's hard to believe that Patel is unfamiliar with him. Peters has called for the deaths of reporters who have promoted vaccines. In March, Peters wrote, "The journos, anchors, and hosts who participated should be indicted, tried, and fried." Not fired, fried. I want to be clear. In June, he posted a video of various media and government figures talking about the vaccine and wrote, "Every single one of these people deserves the rope." Peters has also called for the executions of politicians and LGBTQ advocates. So Peters wrote that Judaism is a death cult built on the blood of murdered babies.
Jesus.
Interesting. I wonder if Donald Trump is going to deport him. I mean, he signed an executive order recently calling for the deportation of anti-Semites. So this guy is saying that Judaism is the death cult built on the blood of murdered babies. I mean, you can't get any more anti-Semitic than that. Peters is also a flat earther, writing, "If the globe is round, someone is going to have to prove it to me."
Yeah.
So Patel, I'll get to more video in just a minute. I'm gonna pause for comment. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, look, I think Kash is the most mentally unstable of murderers row of fairly unstable candidates that Trump has nominated. And he went on all these crazy shows. And it's one thing that you go on a show and then they say, okay, now that show said this 28 years ago, blah, blah, blah. But this is not a normal left-wing, right-wing show. This is like super extreme. And the fact that this guy has said crazy things was fairly well publicized. So, I mean, and they've got this schizophrenia here that I can't quite solve, where they're like, we love Israel, but the Jews, I don't know about the Jews. I mean, I know that it's partly Christian Zionism, like, oh, we gotta have, Israel start a giant war and all the Jews get killed, yay, and then Jesus comes back and all that stuff. But Kash Patel is not a Christian Zionist. I don't look. There's so much madness here. Some of the people I object to, like Marco Rubio, because he's a neocon, but he has enough experience for that role. Kash Patel is a disaster in every direction. No experience, total loon. Having him in charge of this super important law enforcement agency is mental. And so to me, Anna, this is a litmus test of, can they block anyone? Matt Gaetz was a sacrificial lamb. Everyone knew he was gonna get blocked. He got put up so that he could be blocked so that everybody else can go through. So are they really gonna do that, or are they gonna block anyone? And if you don't block Kash Patel, then the Senate confirmation hearings are a joke.
No, I don't think they are gonna block Kash Patel. And I think the Senate confirmation hearings, especially with the makeup of the Senate at the moment, is for the most part a joke. Okay, like, I'm giving you the coverage and the highlights of what's going on during these confirmation hearings because it's good to be informed. But if you're asking me for my prediction, I think that Kash Patel is very likely going to be confirmed. The line of questioning from the Democrats really was rooted in this concern that Patel is going to use his position to pursue retaliatory measures against Democrats, against anyone who investigated January 6th. And so that's why you're hearing these statements from individuals who are allies of Patel, or in this case, hosts who have had Patel on their shows multiple times. And so let's get to what Patel has said during these hearings. So he deflected during an interesting line of questioning from Senator Chris Coons and refused to state that he would resign if he was being asked or forced to take or make illegal actions by the president. Take a look.
I went back and looked, and I asked the same questions of Director Comey and Director Wray. Director Wray quoting former Attorney General Bell, said, "You should be willing to resign if necessary over conduct if you're pressed to engage in it that's unethical, illegal, or unconstitutional. If pressed by the president, would you resign?"
Senator, my answer is simply, I would never do anything unconstitutional or unlawful, and I never have in my 16 years of government service.
Would you be willing to resign the post of FBI director if pressed and given no choice but to obey the order or resign?
Senator, I will always obey the law.
Does obeying the law require you to, as Attorney General Bell said, as FBI Director Wray said, refuse the order or resign?
I'm not familiar with the extent of the law that you're referring to, but my answer is simple. In my 16 years of government service, we will simply follow the law.
So look, I describe that as a deflection. He's not answering yes or no. He's saying that he will follow the law. You can argue that that's not a deflection. He's saying, yes, I will, or I will reject, any effort by Donald Trump to get me to do something illegal. But I'm curious what your interpretation is, Cenk.
Yeah, they're going to follow all those orders. I mean, let's skip the theatrics, right? No, actually, don't skip the theatrics. Good. Get it clear on the record. Have him lie to the senators, because he's definitely lying. And so is Hegseth. When Trump gives an illegal order, it is an absolute 100% guarantee that Hegseth and Patel will follow it. So, and that's why they're avoiding the question. If I'm up for a position in Bernie Sanders' administration and they ask me if he gives you an illegal or unconstitutional order, will you follow it? My answer is super clear. No, I will not follow it. And so it's not my job to determine things around the edges. That's the president's job. But if it is clearly illegal or clearly unconstitutional, I will not do it, because my responsibility is to the American people, not to the person who happens to hold that office. They will never give that answer, because their job is to kiss Donald Trump's ass and to do exactly as they're told, whether it's illegal or not. And even if you're on the right wing, you know that. You know that's why they were selected. You might think, oh, Donald Trump would never give an unconstitutional order, the guy who said we should terminate the Constitution. Anyways, okay, you can have that opinion, but you can't have the opinion that if Donald Trump gives an illegal or unconstitutional order, Kash Patel will not follow through on it because of his conscience. He just told you that he won't. It was super clear in that evasion that he will do whatever Trump says, not what the Constitution or the laws say.
At one point, Senator Peter Welch engaged in many attempts to get Patel to admit to who won the 2020 presidential election. So let's see how he handled that line of questioning.
What's so hard about just saying that Biden won the 2020 election? What's hard about that?
Senator, as I've said before, that President Biden was certified and sworn in, and he was the president. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, the other way to say it is he won.
He was the president.
The other way to say it is he won. I can say Trump won. Do you agree with him that the election was stolen in 2020?
Senator, millions of Americans expressed concern going back to multiple elections over election integrity.
You're so skillful. You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
I just, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. I mean, come on. What was that? What was that? Just, dude, it's over. It's done, okay? It's 2025. Your guy's in office, he's in charge. Why would it be so difficult to just answer that question affirmatively? Yes, Biden won the 2020 presidential election. Let's move on. Because guess what? When you answer that directly, that robs all the other Democratic senators of asking the same question over and over and over again. And when he is refusing to answer it directly, it gives us the impression, I think the accurate impression, that he still hasn't accepted the results of the 2020 presidential election, which is insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah. No, I know, but Anna, he can't answer it because Trump might fire him in the middle of the hearings if he said Biden won the election in 2020.
Well, if Trump were to do that, that would be so deeply pathetic. It really would. It really would. Bro, you're the president right now. You're the president right now. I know,
but Anna, he still hasn't let it go. He still hasn't let it go.
It's pathetic then. It's pathetic.
It is. It's totally pathetic that he's still lying about 2020. You won the presidency twice. What else do you need, right? But no, his giant ego and his thin skin can't handle it. So that's why I bet you if Kash Patel said, of course Joe Biden won the 2020 election, that Trump might literally pull him in the middle of the hearings because he's so obsessed with himself and not the country and not anything else. So look, the real answer Kash Patel should have given is, Senator, I'd love to answer your question, but my lips are pursed in the middle of Donald Trump's cheeks, so I can't speak. And and by the way, to be fair, Senator, that's why I was selected, because I'm one of the biggest ass kissers of Donald Trump in the entire country. But to me, the number one thing and almost the only thing they should be asking about is the enemies list. So who's on your enemies list? What are you planning to do with them? And have you ever bothered to try to figure out that they've done anything wrong, or just they're your political enemies and like a authoritarian thug, a Gestapo, you would like to go and arrest them for no goddamn reason? So go ahead, Kash, answer that one. See if that one's complicated for you.
But he won't answer that. I mean, the whole point of these hearings is to either lie to the Senate about what you intend to do or evade the questions. When pressed on, well, look, to be fair, Patel seemed to break with Trump on one issue, and that had to do with pardoning the violent January 6 rioters. Take a look.
Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6 defendants?
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, the president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, is specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th. And I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So Cenk, boom. He just said that he disagrees with what Donald Trump did in pardoning the violent January 6th offenders who assaulted police officers. He was clear about that, unequivocal. So why can't you just say that Biden won the 2020 presidential election and move on?
So, and I have a theory about that. And the right wing can catch feelings about this, but I've said it about Democrats as well. We've said it for 20 straight years. Look, there's a lot of theatrics in politics that's never actually revealed to the voters and the viewers. And a lot of times, most of the time, it's mainstream media hiding it, right? So in this case, Susie Wiles very likely had a conversation with not just Kash Patel, but almost all the people, because she's deeply competent, with all the people that are going up to these hearings, and probably gave them one thing to disagree on with Trump, so that it looks like, especially now that his position is about representing law enforcement, right? So the one that you give him is, well, I would defend law enforcement, so I'm against, I disagree with President Trump on that. So you give one, disagreement, so it seems like you're reasonable, but not one that the president is overly emotional about. And by the way, do you know how Trump made the decision out there, if you haven't seen this part of the story? At some point as they were discussing it, all the pardons, he got a little bored. So he said, F it, let's just pardon them all. Very sophisticated calculus there.
He didn't want to do it by a case basis. But Cenk, look, I hear what you're saying, but that's speculation. That's like entirely your speculation.
Yes. But it's speculation based on how I know politics works. And they also teach everyone going to a hearing, don't answer their questions, especially the Supreme Court nominees. Both Democrats and Republicans do it. Pretend that you don't have any opinions, pretend that you're a robot, and then later, of course, we'll screw them and you'll actually have left-wing opinions or right-wing opinions, and that's what they always do. So I've seen this movie 2,000 times, so I'm telling you how it actually works.
So when pressed on FISA, which is, of course, the warrantless wiretapping of suspected threats to US national security. Oftentimes, Americans end up getting spied on without a warrant as a result of FISA. Patel stated that he, well, interestingly enough, has the kind of position that the majority of Americans absolutely despise, including the right wing. Let's take a look.
One of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow, if a US person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but anyway, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past.
Yeah.
All right, so he's in favor of warrantless wiretapping of American citizens. That's an easier way to just condense what he just said there.
Yeah. All right, so no, the issue is 702. Because if you allow for warrantless wiretapping, it will be abused every single time. And that's exactly what's happening now. I don't mean in every instance, I mean by every administration whenever it's convenient for them, Republican or Democrat, and they both have. They've grossly abused it. And it's so interesting to see Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel partly get selected because the right wing really likes them, the MAGA movement likes them. And one of the reasons they like them is because they were against warrantless wiretapping. So this is one of there's many issues we talk about where the right wing massively disagrees with us and we fight over it. And I told you there's a couple where we do agree, and they don't like warrantless wiretapping. And that's how he got to be popular. Then he has to kiss the ass of the Republican establishment. And again, Susie Wiles, et cetera, the Trump administration at large says, yeah, go kiss their ass. We're gonna do warrantless wiretapping. We were just lying to our base. Now we're in charge. Of course we're gonna do warrantless wiretapping. Right? And that's, by the way, that's what every president says. Oh, I can't believe the other one did it. Oh, yeah, now I'm in charge. I have the power. Of course I'm going to abuse it. I mean, 702 is so critical. So understand, MAGA, Tulsi and Kash Patel definitely lied to someone. Either they just lied to those Republican senators in a hearing or they lied to you. Okay, now I'm going to give voice here to a couple of members just because they were so funny. Wang Jun on TYT.com says, Kash Patel has the intellect of a 4chan message board. I think that's totally true. And then post-traumatic South disorder said, this is how Trump fights DEI hires, by hiring the most intelligent, most qualified, with the best experienced people. Well played, Mr. President. That is funny because Kash Patel does not seem to fit that mold. But look, if you're on the right and you're angry, oh no, he's perfectly qualified, what a brilliant young gentleman. Okay, look guys, shoe on the other foot. I know neither side likes to do this game, okay? But if you're being fair, this is what you should do every time. So imagine Biden nominated someone who said, or Hillary Clinton, that they have an enemies list of MAGA guys and they're gonna go after them. And that's okay, just put me in charge of the FBI, put me in charge of law enforcement. And they never said what crimes you committed, but they're gonna go after Trump and the MAGA leaders because they have an enemies list. Do you think that person should be confirmed? You can lie if you like and say, oh no, I would say he should be confirmed. Okay, but everybody knows that's a lie. You could pretend that there's some sort of difference, but there isn't. So this guy's not it. This is not what American rights should be. And he's definitely not qualified. And nobody with an enemies list should be put into the US government, especially in law enforcement. This is mental.
Well, there was another hearing that took place today, this time having to do with Tulsi Gabbard. So when we come back, we'll show you some of the highlights from that hearing and more. Don't miss it.
All right, folks, so a bunch of programming notes. First of all, Operation Hope, where we're trying to do some good in the world. Now we're trying to get people to sign on to the Populist Plank, and there's a couple of other things that we're doing. Come join us. We do a town hall on Wednesdays. And by the way, so the monthly chats, the next one's February 5th, so that's next week. We're actually gonna show it to you guys. So that's for members only. But after the members only episode on Wednesday, then you're gonna see the town hall. You can join the town hall by signing up at tyt.com/hope. By the way, greatest group of human beings you'll ever meet. And so I love them. They work hard at trying to do positive change in the world, bring positive change in the world, and do the right things. So it's a great group of folks. All right, if you're watching the show and you like the show, ring the bell. And if you ring the bell, it's totally free, obviously. It just gives you notifications when we go live and a couple of times a day. In the old days, it used to send you all the videos. It doesn't now. It's just every couple of times we go live or have videos. So ring the bell, keep up to date on it. Shop TYT has, in honor of John's anniversary at TYT, has a whole heap of Dragon Squad stuff. In fact, I was wearing that shirt on the upper left, but in green earlier today. So that's awesome. Okay, let me read some comments and I'll come back to some of the things later. Gary Donahue said, Cenk is 100% correct. I've always said that educating young Americans equally is the answer, not rewarding ignorance that does no one any good. Sawyer Ram says, I honestly appreciate your honesty. I may not always agree, but this is relevant news. Thank you. Helen 007 says, something about Patel makes me want to lock my doors. Okay, we're not supposed to comment on how folks look, but I hear you, Helen. Okay, it's the eyes. Bloated Ego says, every non-qualified nominee has been confirmed so far. I hope I'm wrong, but why should we expect this time to be any different? A backbone might appear, but I wouldn't count on it. Yeah, neither would I. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's no way he should be confirmed. It should be 99-0 or 100-0, whatever it is. But he's got to lose 4 Republican senators. My guess is they'll do a rotating thing where 2 or 3 Republicans will vote no again. Oh golly, gee, we just wound up having enough to get by. Mage B1223 says, small donator but big listener. Thanks for speaking the truth. Thank you, brother, and we appreciate you guys so much. On Twitch, Nomad Dragon says the controller should not have let the Black Hawk take that course into their rivals. I know I was ATC instructor at Los Angeles Center. That's really interesting perspective, actually. And so maybe there was something to that particular air traffic controller doing the wrong thing. So thank you for giving that important perspective. Occam's Taser says, I lost a lot of money betting he was going to blame this on windmills. Swings arm in clockwise motion. Yeah, that's funny, and he didn't, but you never know, could. Golden Black Medusa says, we all want the truth, not one side. Thank you for your info, TYT. Mr. Minister says, I'm pretty sick of people trying to demand TYT do propaganda. You speak for me, brother. So thank you, appreciate it. And don't worry, there's plenty of shows that do. Right? Jay Jesper 82 says, hi everyone, Ana Cenk, you're awesome. Keep up the good work. Thank you guys. You're wonderful to us. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Ana, and Preston the Dragon. Good time to sign up around John Idol's 13th anniversary at TYT. And David Martinez, thank you for joining at a higher level because it allows us to keep prices low. And we did all throughout inflation, kept it at the same price. We appreciate all of you guys being a wonderful community together. They hit the join button below. All right, Ana.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard had her confirmation hearing today. She was nominated by Donald Trump to be the head of DNI. Let's see some of the highlights from what happened.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden. I agree with Tom Cotton. He's a traitor.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Our senators are a joke, and nothing made that clearer than how they handled the confirmation hearing of DNI director nominee Tulsi Gabbard, that's Director of National Intelligence. Now, it seems like there really is bipartisan hatred toward Tulsi Gabbard, but what really stood out to me is the fact that they all kept asking about her views on Edward Snowden. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Edward Snowden, he was the whistleblower who at the time alerted Glenn Greenwald about the NSA's indiscriminate spying of all Americans, okay? That was a huge scandal. And he is not a traitor to America. If anything, he is a patriot who felt the need to risk everything in his life to let the American people know that the federal government was indiscriminately spying on all of us, So truly, there's really no way that we can show you all the Snowden bashing coming from senators, but I do want to give you a little taste.
Until you were nominated by the president to be the DNI, you consistently praised the actions of Edward Snowden. Some who, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation, and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You even called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. But Edward Snowden isn't a whistleblower. And in this case, I'm a lot closer to the chairman's words, where he said, Snowden is, quote, an egotistical serial liar and traitor who, quote, deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life.
Edward Snowden got mad at his employer that he didn't get the promotion that he wanted and started harvesting information, and then found some things that he didn't like on it.
Why is he being treated like a folk hero by you instead of the traitor that he was?
We're going to get to Tulsi Gabbard's answer in just a minute, which, to be quite frank with you, I wasn't happy with. But it is infuriating to see the bipartisanship pushing this narrative that Edward Snowden is like some demon that should be, I mean, like they act as though he's like public enemy number one. We were all being spied on. Okay, the federal government was collecting data on every single one of us, regardless of what we've done, what we didn't do. It didn't matter. Indiscriminate spying by the federal government is an overreach of the federal government. And Edward Snowden basically threw his entire life away to let the American people know about that. He should be pardoned, period. But I don't know, it's unlikely to happen. What do you think, Jake?
Well, okay, so first to the senators. If I was in Tulsi's situation and they asked me, is Edward Snowden a traitor? Easy answer. Hell no. You authorizing spying on Americans illegally, you're the traitor. You're the actual enemy. And the reason why you're so mad at Edward Snowden is because he let us know that you're the actual enemy. Because he told us what you wouldn't tell us, that you were spying in on us. That's unconstitutional, it's illegal. And then you guys afterwards said, oh yeah, we want to do it anyway. And Edward Snowden's such a bad traitor for trying to protect your constitutional rights. No, he's not. Absolute American hero. It's the senators that are the goddamn problem. And look at the Uniparty. All of a sudden they're unified. No, spy on the plebeian masses. How dare you support a whistleblower telling you to protect your constitutional rights? Okay, now I turn to MAGA. I proposed pardoning Edward Snowden. Almost all of MAGA agreed. They loved that Tulsi Gabbard wanted to support Edward Snowden and support his pardon, etc. That was part of the reason that she rose up with the right wing. And what happened to your Republican senators? I know you hate a lot of them. Well, this is the time to show it, okay? Because these guys, and by the way, if you're a Democrat, also the same thing for you. Those Democratic senators are saying, let's go spying. Yay, spy on Americans. As a left-winger, you should despise that. The people who initially said Edward Snowden was a hero were on the left wing, okay? So, and by the way, this is not something that the left wing is hypocritical about. They have challenged Democrats and said that they were wrong, okay? Right wing, I know a lot of you believe this, well then show it, because we're not in charge. The right wing, unfortunately or unfortunately, I think unfortunately, but they think fortunately, you are in charge. So if you're in charge, are you gonna stand up and go, what the hell? No, we said Edward Snowden was a hero. We meant that he's a hero. Stop kissing the ass of the Uniparty and pardon the guy. Are you gonna put, by the way, not just about Tulsi, but are you gonna put pressure on Trump? Or is that guy going to go another 4 years where everyone calls him a traitor, including Trump?
So I want to go to Tulsi Gabbard and how she answered one of the 1,000 times that she was asked this same question about Edward Snowden.
Ms. Gabbard, a simple yes or no question. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it. The fact is, he also, even as he broke the law, released information that exposed egregious, illegal, and unconstitutional programs that are happening within our government that led to serious reforms that Congress undertook.
Was Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
He broke the law. Senator, have confirmed as Director of National Intelligence. I will work with you to make sure that there is not another Snowden-like leak.
Yes or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
As someone who has worn our uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security is.
Apparently you don't.
Yeah, the traitors to the United States of America are sitting in Congress, okay, fattening their bank accounts through insider trading that ordinary Americans would go to prison for a very long time, okay? The traitors to America and Americans are the corrupt politicians who provide cover for a corrupt government that indiscriminately spies on Americans, even when they've done absolutely nothing wrong. Okay, it's disgusting to see the bipartisan agreement on this issue and the fact that they think they're so high and mighty, as if they're not traitors to the American people when they're elected to serve the best interests of the American people, but they consistently do the opposite. I can't stand these people. And honestly, I've said this before, I'm gonna say it again. I've had issues with Tulsi Gabbard because I felt that she was dishonest about her political identity. And it turned out she was dishonest about her political identity, pretending as though she was some progressive when in reality she wasn't. But put that aside, even when she turned her back on progressives, she still maintained her positions on Edward Snowden, on warrantless wiretapping. And I liked that she held those positions. I thought, okay, if she gets confirmed, at least there are some qualities to her that I find to be positive and helpful. But now she has turned her back on those values, and it's beyond disgusting. It's beyond disgusting how far human beings will go in an effort to accumulate power for themselves. And that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a more nuanced opinion on what Tulsi did there. So I want to talk to you about it in a second. First, Mikey3343 wrote in, member on YouTube. Remember that time Ana said she thought Tulsi was a secret right-winger? Boy, was she wrong. Sarcasm. Yeah, it's okay.
It's almost as if I really do my due diligence and I research the crap out of everything I talk about before I talk about it. I know it's crazy.
Almost like we do in the show. Okay, so anyway, Mikey, we appreciate it, brother. Everybody hit the join button.
I do, Mikey, thank you.
Yeah, hit the join button below the video on YouTube to become a member like Mikey. All right, so now, look, I would have had a much clearer answer, as I told you earlier, than Tulsi did. Was she doing both sides? Yes, she was. And I've had a lot of criticism of Tulsi Gabbard as well. But Ana, I thought she was trying to give a nuanced answer there and go, hey, yeah, he broke the law, but on the other hand, he revealed important information, but they didn't really let her finish. And sometimes the senators interrupt because the witness is taught to filibuster and take up as much of their time as possible. In that case, though, she wasn't filibustering. She was actually trying to give her a real answer. Because, yeah, I already know it. Shut up, he's a traitor, okay? Let us spy, we have to spy. We hate the Constitution, but we're not the traitors. My donors want us to spy, but we're not the traitors. Edward Snowden's the traitor. Okay, look, why do I say Trump's also responsible? He's not responsible for calling him a traitor like the senators did. But he could pardon him today. He had 4 years to pardon him. And this time around, MAGA said, whoa, he's definitely gonna pardon him. And instead of pardoning him, we got Republican senators yelling at his nominees, you better call him a traitor.
Look, who knows? Who knows with Trump? It's not like he gives a damn what Republican senators think anyway, right? So He might pardon Edward Snowden. We have no idea. What I do know is he didn't pardon him in his first term. And in fact, Donald Trump's Department of Justice was trying to extradite Julian Assange back to the United States so they could throw him in prison for the rest of his life. So that was a reality in the first Trump term as well, and it was beyond egregious. So look, I hear what you're saying. She was trying to be nuanced, but you can't be nuanced during these hearings, unfortunately, because none of these senators are interested in hearing a nuanced opinion or a nuanced take on an important issue. They want yes or no answers. So what I would have done is I would have said he was a whistleblower and he drew attention to the fact that the federal government was engaging in indiscriminate spying of American citizens. Do you support that, Senator? That's what I would have done.
Yeah,
But
well,
anyway.
that would have been way better, and I agree with you, but they're coached to just get through this freaking thing. So now we're all left with the hope that she's lying to the senators. That's what we have to root for, and that they're actually not going to continue to chase Edward Snowden to the ends of the earth. But there isn't much hope, because Donald Trump, at the end of the day, does he really like have a philosophical drive to free Edward Snowden? No, he'll only do it if MAGA puts enough pressure on him. Otherwise, he couldn't care less about any other human being, let alone Edward Snowden. And finally, I want to correct the record of those lying senators. Edward Snowden actually went through the right procedures first. And the government was like, yeah, right, like we would give a damn. Of course we're spying on them on purpose. Shut up, right? Then when he had absolutely no choice, he went to the press. Absolute hero.
Yep. Well, we're not quite done with Tulsi Gabbard. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we're going to talk about the line of questioning pertaining to her meeting with Bashar al-Assad in Syria and more. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there, because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh, and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know. Wow, there's a B? Yeah. I'm like, I hit 3 cars. I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad. Really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't want to keep hitting your cars, and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. We thugged out.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
An outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning.
You have the Young Turks and a bunch of other progressive forces saying this is the time to fight for our values.
And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
What we've done is sustainable, slow, healthy growth. And I think that's the way news should be, where you don't rely on sensationalist stuff. You don't lean on whatever's trendy in the news at any given moment. You know, you just go with the truth.
You gave me a platform.
You've uplifted so many other progressive voices through this network, and you're constantly looking for people that you can amplify through the work we do, through the infrastructure that you built at TYT.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
We're super serious about the news. We also managed to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We're not TYT, you're TYT.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT. The place is like 95% TYT on.
Favorite channel. We're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Ana with you guys. And Jeff and me, he just joined through tyt.com/join. By the way, annual membership gives you basically 2 months off. So that's on tyt.com, so make sure you check that out. All right, Casper, what's next?
2 months free, not 2 months off, right? That's what you mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, free, off, etc.
I mean, if I buy a TYT membership, can I get 2 months off?
2 months off of membership pricing, yes.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right, fair enough. We got to get back to the confirmation hearing for Tulsi Gabbard, so let's get right into it. During the confirmation hearing for Donald Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the issue of Syria came up, namely the atrocities that were committed by Bashar al-Assad, Tulsi Gabbard's previous comments about them, and her previous meeting with Bashar al-Assad in Syria. In a 2017 interview with Wolf Blitzer, she questioned reports that Assad's forces had used banned chemical weapons, saying there's responsibility that goes around, Wolf. Again, my interest is in bringing about peace. Standing here and pointing fingers does not accomplish peace for the Syrian people. It will not bring about an end to this war. The senators also asked about her trip to visit Assad back in 2017, during which she claims that she pressured him on his treatment of his own citizens, including his use of chemical weapons. Here's more.
Do you accept the conclusion broadly that Assad used chemical weapons against Syrians?
Yes, and I'm on the record for years of agreeing with that broad assessment.
Thank you. Among the attacks the U.S. assessed Assad was responsible for 2 that occurred in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in Syria. As a member of Congress and as a presidential candidate, and as recently as this month, in your written responses to this committee, you have cast doubt on the assessment that Assad is culpable in these 2 attacks. Is that still your position?
Senator, I raised those questions given conflicting information and evidence that was presented at that time. Okay.
So it is interesting because usually when it comes to Assad's use of chemical weapons, there is widespread agreement that he did use chemical weapons against his own people during the war. But there were those 2 instances that were outlined by the senator there that for whatever reason has led to a lot of disagreement, a lot of fighting about what's true and what isn't true. It is a complicated story. My opinion personally is if Bashar al-Assad has used chemical weapons against his own citizens, I mean, that's it. That's all you need to know. And that's a problem, right? So I don't know why you need to provide cover for him in 2 separate cases. But that has been her view. That has been a point of contention between Tulsi Gabbard and other members of the Democratic Party when she was identifying as a Democrat. What are your thoughts, Cenk?
Yeah, so I interviewed her back when we were friendly, and she explained why she went to go see Assad. And it never made any sense to me. It just, with the best reading of it, it's still totally irrational. How does it help you? How does it help at the time the left wing? Now I guess the right wing. I don't know. I just don't know how it helps in any way, shape, or form. And look, we've gone through the evidence on that, on the chemical use, and gotten into huge fights over it, et cetera. In our opinion, not it's just our opinion, but based on what we have read and overwhelming evidence, we think that Assad did use those chemical weapons. The idea that the rebels just don't have an air force and they were dropped from the sky. So I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, but either way, she should be clear. So do you think that he used them, or don't you think that he used them? You're saying conflicting evidence. Okay, yes, but we came to a conclusion. You seem to have come to a conclusion before. Have you changed your conclusion, or are you just now confused?
Yeah, and by the way, let me just say something about meeting with Assad or with any other, dictator or terrible, world leader. I don't actually have a problem with taking those types of meetings. What was problematic about how Tulsi did it is it was a trip that was paid for by Assad's regime. Assad's regime invited her, they paid for the trip. So when that happens, obviously it's gonna be a propaganda mission by the Assad regime. And so it's one thing when you're taking a trip like that and talking to world leaders in an effort to use diplomacy, figure out what's going on. You're funding your own trip. There's no, questionable, nefarious influences. Like, that's fine, but that's not what happened here. Yeah. And after she got caught, after it became a big news story, she alleged that she returned the money for the trip to the Assad regime.
Yeah, okay, super important to note that Assad regime initially paid for it, but I have a problem with it either way. Look, you guys have heard me say 1,000 times, you negotiate with your enemies and they're not your friends. So if the president, whether it's President Biden or President Trump, negotiated with Assad, I would have had no problem with that, none. Go meet him, no problem. Trump met Kim Jong-un. Yeah, no problem. And that's how you do it. When Dick Cheney said we don't negotiate with evil and rejected a peace deal with Iran, it was stupid, et cetera. But she was a rando congresswoman. She wasn't the president. She wasn't negotiating anything. And so sometimes that caused a lot of trouble. Well, like when Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan for no reason and flared up more conflict in the region. And even then, at least she was like a Speaker of the House or former Speaker of the House. But why? She seemed to have gone just to agitate things. And of course, afterwards, there was a lot more military sales that happened, and her donors were super happy. So I think these random visits by people not negotiating peace are problematic.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair analysis. So I want to move on though to her views on FISA, right? So warrantless wiretapping. So the senators were very skeptical of Tulsi Gabbard's recent reversal on Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, also known as FISA, of course, which does in fact allow US intelligence to collect foreign communications without a warrant. Now you might be thinking, well, it's foreign communications. What does this have to do with illegal or warrantless wiretapping of American citizens? Well, there are, of course, American citizens who have family members in other countries. And oftentimes what was happening through the warrantless wiretapping is Americans were being targeted and their conversations were being listened to by the intelligence community if they were talking to someone who was outside of the country. And you should need a warrant for that. The privacy rights of Americans should be considered important. And if you want to listen in on their conversations, or if you want to collect data about their conversations, you should obtain a warrant before you do that. But right now, that is not the case. And Tulsi Gabbard, to her credit, in the past has spoken out against this practice. But after she was nominated for Director of National Intelligence, she certainly changed her tune, essentially telling the senators exactly what they want to hear, that she thinks that, Section 702 is actually very important in protecting national security. But as I mentioned, senators are questioning that because it's such a recent reversal. So senators hounded her on whether she was sufficiently supportive of warrantless surveillance during the hearing today. Let's take a look at that.
Many of the concerns that we raised when we served in the House of Representatives were centered around the lack of safeguards to protect Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and civil liberties as it pertains to searching of U.S. persons with that incidental collection that occurs under 702. You and I both know and agree that the national security capability that is provided by Section 702 that enables this foreign surveillance on non-U.S. persons overseas is critical, period. My commitment is to make sure that our national security tools are maintained to fulfill that requirement while also protecting Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and protection against unlawful search and seizure.
So very different from what she has said about FISA and Section 702 in the past, namely before she was nominated for Director of National Intelligence. Cenk.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make it a fun, nonsensical point. Why not? The Rock's doppelganger in the back was interesting to look at. And as she's leading up to saying 702 is correct, he's like, and then she says 702
I
is
noticed
correct.
that.
And he goes, okay, good. Is that the handler? I don't know, okay. But, he's very interested, raises his eyebrows. Okay, I don't know if it's The Rock's older brother or just a doppelganger.
Those are some broad shoulders.
Yeah, okay, look, onto the serious stuff. This is yet another one of those, the Uniparty wants me to say that 702 is awesome and we should collect private information about Americans in a kind of a lawless, unconstitutional way. Sure, yeah, I'm in favor of it now. And so I don't know what she means, and I don't know if she's telling the truth or not telling the truth. But in this case, I hope she's lying to the senators. And in the old days, I used to care about lying to the senators in these confirmation hearings. I don't at all anymore, because the whole thing's nonsense. It's just theatrics. Literally everyone lies on both sides. They always say, oh my God, I'm the most neutral guy in the world. And then they get into office and do whatever the hell they want. So useless.
Final thing that I wanted to mention real quick is something that Michael Tracy actually drew attention to, and it's just so wrong. So one of the things that Tulsi Gabbard was rightly very critical of the Bush administration on, of the Obama administration on, and even the Trump administration on was the drone war, right? The use of drones in the Middle East, drone strikes in the Middle East, which ended up killing a lot of innocent civilians. Well, she has now changed her tune on that. Michael Tracy writes that Tulsi Gabbard now says she agrees with Trump drone assassinating Soleimani. So she is retrospectively agreeing with an act she previously denounced as illegal and unconstitutional.
Look at, first I want to give credit to Michael Tracy. Way to be principled, and and he, look, agree or disagree with him. He has been on these issues and been principled on these issues. And so he didn't, he has given her praise when she deserved it, whether she was left wing or right wing. And here he's criticizing her because she amply deserves it. Guys, the most important thing isn't whether Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, or any of these folks are lying to the senators or if they're lying to their own base. The most important thing is who Trump is lying to. So is he going to actually do the warrantless wiretapping? Is he actually going to pardon Edward Snowden? Or was he lying to MAGA? And he's not going to pardon Edward Snowden. And he's going to continue to do warrantless wiretapping just like he did in his first term. Well, that's the relevant part, and that's what we're going to find out. Because then if he does all those things, all the stuff he told you about how he was opposed to the Uniparty, was he?
So in our members only bonus episode today, I do want to talk about what I believe was one of the most bizarre and hilarious moments from Tulsi Gabbard's Senate confirmation hearing today. It involved Tom Cotton. I can't wait to share that with our members. So if you're not a member, you can become one by hitting that join button. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also go to tyt.com/join. All right, for now, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're gonna get into some other news, including what Donald Trump has suggested about Guantanamo Bay. We'll be right back.
So first, let's go to members at tyt.com. Nasty Dragon writes in, you can always tell whenever it's a crime against Americans when both sides are coming after you. Yeah, totally, 100%. Rambo Dragon says, Ana is the hardest working journalist / media hottie in America, and her hair is always beautiful.
Wait, who was that?
Rambo Dragon.
Are we still giving away those gift cards?
No, I'm not letting you give away gift cards for someone calling you hot or a good journalist, okay?
I care less about the hot stuff, although I will allow it. But the hardworking journalist part, I'll definitely allow it. I'll reward it.
Okay.
Anyway.
No, we're not doing that. But
All
I
right,
hear
fine.
you. I hear you. Tattered Remnant said, Gabbard's hearing is a very clear indication of the duopoly nature of our political system. The uniparty protects the criminals. Yep. Starry Night Squirrel Dragon says, I'm still mad at myself for donating to Tulsi Gabbard in the past. It's people like her and Fetterman who have burned me for donating. Only Bernie got money from me during this cycle. So look.
Can I weigh on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me weigh on that first. So look, you should never feel bad. Like you were lied to. You're not the bad guy. She's the bad guy, okay? And honestly, it's really up to people in the media to do their due diligence. If a politician is speaking, they're lying. That's what the assumption should be. And I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to members of the media. And look, you should be aware of your personal biases. And if you are, a little more friendly to one party over the other, well, you should be aware of that. And you should dig even deeper, right? If it's your preferred party engaging in something that doesn't seem quite right. And if the media inform people accurately about what these politicians really represent, if they had dug into their records to figure out, are they telling the truth about, where they stand on these issues? I think you would have been able to make a better decision about who to donate to. And so I want people to understand that's what I'm trying to do, okay? I'm not trying to do propaganda for the right, but I also don't want to do propaganda for the left either. I want to get you guys accurate information, and then you decide what you do, how you act, and who you vote for.
Yeah. So I was going to say a similar thing. Don't get mad at yourself. She lied to you. How were you supposed to know that? I get that it makes you more jaded. And look, I'm having trouble getting past being jaded. So, the other day, Chuck Schumer actually did something great. And so we always give credit where credit is due. He blocked the sanctions against the ICC for going after Netanyahu. So way to be principled on that, Chuck Schumer. There was one Democrat who voted with the Republicans to try to imprison ICC officials for doing their job or sanction them. That was John Fetterman, of course. So I don't know what's going on with Fetterman, but so he lied to all of us. I don't feel bad about it. He should feel bad about it. Anyways, that's why we try to bring you the truth no matter what. And yes, Ana and I, but mainly Ana, were yelled at by people on the left saying, "Oh my God, you're being so unfair to Tulsi Gabbard. She's such a great left winger." Okay, at some point, being right has to matter. Simply Populist says, Cenk, I watched your interview on impact theory. It was fantastic. I love the nuance and learned so much more about you and your thinking in terms of the big picture. I've even decided to buy your book. Well, that's amazing. Thank you. Book is just coming, guys. I want to tell you about something though that's important. tyt.com/press. What we're doing there is we're putting up my interviews on other shows, both left-wing and right-wing shows. Tom from Impact Theory, I think, voted for Trump. But you can't even tell from the interview. It's so interesting. Go check that out if you can. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Ana, and American hero Kimberly Miranda. And if I'm ever asked about it, Kimberly, in a congressional hearing, I'm going to say, yes, she is a hero. Okay, she hit the join button below, became a Young Turks member. All right, Casper.
Well, Donald Trump has proposed something. In fact, he announced a new executive order, but is this practice really going to be new? We're going to get into that. Let's take a look.
I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back.
President Donald Trump has proposed using Guantanamo Bay, which of course is in Cuba, but is controlled by the United States, to detain tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants. Now, Trump made the announcement during the signing ceremony for the Laken-Riley Act. It was legislation passed with the help of Democrats in Congress, which allows the authorities to detain and deport undocumented immigrants who have simply been charged or accused of a crime but haven't been convicted of a crime. Now, the Center for Constitutional Rights said in a statement that migrants and asylum seekers are being cast as the new terrorist threat, deserving to be discarded in an island prison, removed from legal and social services and supports. And this organization does plan to pursue legal action against Donald Trump and his plans to use Guantanamo Bay to detain undocumented immigrants who are going to be deported. Now, Gitmo, of course, is better known for its role in detaining suspected terrorists. Presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden both claimed that they wanted to close Gitmo because of all of the scandal surrounding Guantanamo Bay and the detention of terrorists or suspected terrorists. In fact, there had been individuals detained at Gitmo who had never even been charged with a crime, who had never gone to trial for anything. And that's why, Gitmo brings up a lot of really bad feelings, a lot of bad thoughts for good reason. I mean, there were abuses at Gitmo, especially during George Bush's administration. But Trump is also right in that most people don't know that Guantanamo Bay has in fact been used for immigrant detention in the past. And even under Democratic presidents to a pretty extreme degree. So this is something I personally didn't know about. I did some digging and was kind of shocked by what I found. So US government agencies and private contractors have used facilities at Guantanamo Bay to detain asylum seekers and refugees for several decades, rights groups say. Trump has instructed the secretaries of defense and Homeland Security to expand the base's Migrant Operations Center to fully, to full capacity. Okay. And look, it is generally viewed as a location of last resort for immigrant detention, usually because of our, detention facilities already being overcrowded, no space left. And so that's when presidents will agree to use Guantanamo Bay's facilities to detain immigrants. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth weighed in on that point while appearing on Fox News. Here's what he had to say about it.
President Trump has been very clear with those countries that if you aren't willing to take your criminals back, your illegals back, then we will hold you accountable. And things have shifted quickly. In other cases, we want somewhere else to hold them safely in the interim, criminal illegals. Guantanamo Bay is a perfect place. This is a temporary transit, which is already the mission of Naval Station Guantanamo Bay, where we can plus up thousands and tens of thousands if necessary to humanely move illegals out of our country where they do not belong back to the countries where they came from in proper process.
Guantanamo's been used for illegal immigrants dating back, I think it's 30 years. Bill Clinton used it for something very similarly back in the 1990s. So you're going to be using it as a way station in essence, where criminal illegal immigrants are not yet accepted by their home country. Do I have that correctly?
It's folks who maybe are in transit to their home country or a safe third harbor country, and it's taking a little time to move with that processing or the paperwork. Better they be held at a safe location like Guantanamo Bay, which is meant and built for migrants.
So during that same interview, Hegseth also said that the immigrant detainees will not be held with the terrorism suspects. And to be clear, in the past, that has not been the practice. Okay, they don't put terrorist suspects in the same facility as immigrants in detention. But that point about Bill Clinton that you just heard is actually true. So in 1994, President Bill Clinton resumed the previous administration's use of the Guantanamo base for processing Haitian refugees and later ordered Cuban asylum seekers caught at sea to be held on the base. Later that same year, the facility's migrant population totaled 45,000 1,000, according to a government report. So, Cenk, I know that Francesca Fiorentini is currently attacking you about this as if Donald Trump is unique. He's novel compared to past presidents, certainly a special kind of evil that we've never seen before. In her mind, these are the gulags that she was warning about. But in fact, this has been a long-standing practice. You can be against that practice, but Donald Trump isn't doing anything new here.
Yeah, so I'm going to address it, but there's two different issues here. One, should he send him to Gitmo? And my answer to that is no. So what is Gitmo mainly known for? Unconstitutional lawlessness. So I know why Trump's doing it. He's doing this threat, and he probably will do some portion of this to make it seem like he's tough and you better not come here. And if you're undocumented immigrant, especially criminals, we're going to send you to Gitmo and scare everybody to death, right? But copying Dick Cheney, not a good look. I thought that all of MAGA was making fun of Kamala Harris for embracing Dick Cheney. But if you're embracing Dick Cheney's Frankenstein in Guantanamo, where the whole point was to kidnap people, by the way, oftentimes without any evidence, torture them, and treat them in an unconstitutional way because they thought Guantanamo was a lawless area where the law didn't apply. And now Trump is saying, oh, Dick Cheney had it right. Let's go send people there. At a bare minimum, not a good look. And overall, not a good policy. Okay, now the second issue is this mass deportation camps, the gulags have begun, et cetera. Now look, I think that the clip that Francesca's using is misleading and totally out of context, but that's okay. But I know that—
No, it's not okay. No, it's not okay. That dishonesty is not okay.
Yeah,
but continue, go ahead.
I hear you, I hear you. I don't mean to
but she's
that.
getting the likes that she wants, right? Otherwise, I mean, who would pay attention to anything she's doing if she's not attacking TYT? But anyway, continue, Jay.
Yeah, all right. So I have my issues with that, and I made that clear on her account, right? But what I'm more worried about is good folks that are getting into a panic because everyone's telling them the gulags are imminent, including some of our members. In fact, Rep Cat, the political cat boy, great member, just wrote in, and I want to read it and then I want to address it because it's so related to this story. They wrote in, so now that we've got concentration camps already, and we're only less than 2 weeks in, are you going to listen to all of us, mostly queer people, sounding the alarms on this and the impending Christian Holocaust? No. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Guys, Clinton, as Anna just explained to you, you could look it up for yourself, even if you don't believe us, no problem, okay? Clinton used it and had 45,000 migrants there. The prison and the center are different, okay? So that doesn't mean that you should be in favor of sending them there. As I just told you, I think the content and the optics are bad and wrong. But if you call a migrant center that Bill Clinton had 45,000 migrants in a gulag that is showing you that we're about to have a Holocaust, then why didn't Clinton do the Holocaust? And here's the interesting part. Why didn't mainstream media tell you that Clinton was doing that and get all outraged? Like, oh, I can't believe Clinton is using Guantanamo and he's stuffing these poor Haitian, by the way, immigrants, Cuban immigrants, Caribbean immigrants into Guantanamo. If they were equally outraged by that and they called that the impending Holocaust, and then they did the same exact thing with Trump, then I say, okay, at least they're being consistent. So look, two things can be true at the same time. It could be wrong to send them there without it being gulags that are going to imprison everybody that is undocumented immigrant or otherwise, and apparently we're going to set up concentration camps for Chinese people at some point. Okay, I mean, but when you go to those extremes, there's two giant problems. There's three giant problems. One is you're not being accurate, and that's an enormous problem. Okay, number two, you're scaring the hell out of everybody. In fact, you're helping Trump scare the hell out of everybody. Oh my God, the concentration camps are coming. Everybody's so super scared. That's what Trump wants. But
that is what he wants.
So I need everyone on that side to answer. Was it a concentration camp when Clinton did it? Okay, so let's be consistent, and maybe you'll say, yeah, it was, and you remember the Holocaust that happened right afterwards. Okay, so it doesn't excuse it. He shouldn't send them there. There's plenty of facilities here. And again, these are criminals. And I know, and here's another part that I'm opposed to. When they round up people that were not convicted of a crime, I'm against it. Okay, so, and for a couple of reasons. And when they say, well, somebody was accused, good enough. No, not good enough. That's exactly one of the problems with sending people to Gitmo. That's exactly what we did last time. Somebody was accused, good enough. No, we got a whole bunch of people who didn't do it at all, that sat there for so long and got tortured, right? So I'm against the policy, but if you say this migrant center that we have used before, including Democratic presidents, is a concentration camp where they're going to do mass deportations of everyone, including Chinese Americans or whatever, right? Or Chinese immigrants or whatever crazy thing we're making up today. Well, you're doing a giant disservice to the truth and to your own viewers, readers, etc. You owe them the truth. And by the way, look, when you say about the LGBTQ community, there are things that you should be deeply concerned about. And we talked about it on the show the other day, or actually several times, which is banning transgender people from the military. I think that's outrageous. I think it's unconstitutional. I think that's the thing we need to focus on and fight back against. But if you're spending your time fighting against mythical concentration camps, you're so worried and you're driving everybody into a psychosis, not at all helpful. Stick with the facts.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more news for you, including Mark Zuckerberg's latest bending of the knee for Donald Trump.
All right, back on TYT. A couple of quick things here. Rep Cat, the political catboy, wrote back in, and it was still wrong when Clinton did it. Great, perfect. Look, I love that you're being principled on it and consistent on it. And that's exactly what I support. But also, Clinton didn't turn them into concentration camps, and they weren't, right? So we could be against it while not being hyperbolic about them being concentration camps. Lou B says, and these are all now, I think these are fair. Lou B says, I'm certain the very same argument was made in support of World War II Japanese internment camps. Quote, we just want to protect them. I'm positive you're right about that. And that's why I'm opposed to sending them to Gitmo. So
yeah, by the way, let me just say, this isn't about protecting anybody, right? I also disagree with sending migrants to Gitmo. And I'm also furious that despite pretending like Obama and Biden were gonna close Gitmo, they did not do that. Okay, they did not shut down Gitmo. And so when you leave certain practices in place, okay, and that's the thing that drives me crazy, right? The reason why I have a problem with the lack of coverage of what Democrats are up to, because I do think corporate media provides cover for the bad behavior of Democrats. What ends up happening is it makes someone like Donald Trump seem like a unique threat, and Democrats get away with doing the same thing that we are against, right? And so why is it okay for a Democratic president to do it? I know that our viewer is not making that argument, but I'm positive the majority of people on the left have no idea that this was a common practice that was on steroids during the Clinton administration. And the reason why I have a problem with it, in addition to that, is that it makes Donald Trump seem like, ooh, a very unique threat. Oh my God. And it instills a lot of fear in people. So it's important to know what the reality is. I'm against this practice as well, but this is something that Democrats have been guilty of doing as well. And they deserve the same ire that Donald Trump is getting.
Yeah. All right. So I want to thank our members here that finance the clock that we have up there that sometimes you'll catch me looking at. We want to thank Elizabeth Nowak and Don Schumacher. So the countdown clock in the studio is right above our heads or above the TV screen that we looked at. And they named it the Bulwark of Liberty, which I love. Elizabeth shared some background about the name. Bulwark of Liberty came from James Madison's proposed draft of the First Amendment that said, quote, and the freedom of the press as one of the great bulwarks of liberty shall be inviolable. We really see Cenk and Ana as our bulwarks. Thank you again for your contribution. And thank you for powering our coverage. So Elizabeth and Don, you guys are amazing. Now you're got that plaque up there. I saw it the other day and I kept looking at it. Bulwark Liberty, I love it. So many things around the studio are named for other campaigns. The background here, this screen, Kelly from Texas. Kelly, if you're still out there, love you. We look at it every day. I look at the people who built the studio every single day. It's on the wall as we walk in. We do this show with you guys. All right, one of our sponsors is got a huge thing coming up, Prize Picks. Obviously, they care a lot about the big game that's coming up. And they're saying don't miss out on last season's last football game with Prize Picks. The best place to win cash while watching the big game. Download the app today and use the code TYT to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code TYT. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Ana, and Dr. Barbara Hart. Thank you for joining by hitting that beautiful join button below. Guys, in the bonus episode for the members, I'm gonna read some more comments, both from right-wing viewers and left-wing viewers. It's gonna be fun, an interesting conversation, but we'll get to that after we're done with all the news. So Ana, what's next?
Mark Zuckerberg is in the news yet again, and specifically for kowtowing to Donald Trump, bending the knee, and this has to do with a lawsuit that Trump brought against Facebook. Take a look.
Well, I watched their news conference, and I thought it was a very good news conference. I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook, I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that. Say it.
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past?
Probably, yeah, probably.
That video was amazing. Do you think that Mark Zuckerberg is responding to the threats you've made against him in the past? Yeah, probably. Well, following Mark Zuckerberg's decision to end their fact-checking program and instead revert to a community notes type process on Facebook, the Meta CEO is now giving Donald Trump yet another win. So he has agreed to pay almost $25 million to settle a 2021 lawsuit filed by Donald Trump against his company, against Meta, after Trump was banned from Facebook due to the January 6th Capitol riots. So let me give you some more context and then we'll get to what this settlement is all about. And let me just be clear, it's, in my opinion, obvious that had the suit continued, there's no way Trump would have won. I mean, Meta's a private company. They have the right to ban whoever they please, but let me continue. So back in 2021, Trump sued multiple big tech companies like Meta, X, which was Twitter at the time, and Google for their decision to suspend his accounts following the Capitol riots. Zuckerberg said in a January 7th, 2021 post on Facebook that Trump's refusal to condemn his supporters who stormed and occupied the Capitol showed that he intends to use his remaining time in office to undermine the peaceful and lawful transition of power to his elected successor, Joe Biden. Now, Trump's accounts on Facebook and Instagram remained locked until fairly recently. They were unlocked in February of 2023. A federal judge actually dismissed the Twitter suit. The Google suit was administratively closed in 2023, but the Facebook lawsuit was ongoing, although it was mostly inactive. So despite the inactivity, Donald Trump was still not a fan of Zuckerberg and threatened to send him to prison if he rigged the election against him earlier last year. Then things changed after Trump won the presidential election, securing a second term in office, of course. And Zuckerberg began ingratiating himself with the president-elect. Serious talks about the suit began after Zuckerberg flew to Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida to dine with him in November, according to people familiar with the discussions. The dinner was one of several efforts by Zuckerberg and Meta to soften the relationship with Trump and the incoming administration. Toward the end of the November dinner, Trump raised the matter of the lawsuit, the people said, The president signaled that the litigation had to be resolved before Zuckerberg could be brought into the tent, one of the people said. So, and then he essentially agreed to settle Donald Trump's suit for $25 million. And according to the Wall Street Journal, of that $25 million, $22 million will go toward a fund for Trump's presidential library with the, by the way, man, there's a lot of money going to the presidential library. Like, how much does it cost to build a presidential library? But I digress. With the rest of it going to legal fees and the other plaintiffs who signed on to the case. Meta won't admit wrongdoing, the people said. Trump signed the settlement agreement Wednesday in the Oval Office. So, look, I think Zuckerberg knows that that lawsuit wasn't going anywhere. So in my opinion, this was another way of providing like a little financial benefit to Trump, a little quid pro quo, if you will. So what are your thoughts, Cenk?
Yeah, so lots of thoughts on this one. First of all, the suit was utter nonsense. Twitter won it easily because as a private company, they're not the government. They have no First Amendment obligations. They block people all the time. That goes to point number two. All right, Facebook, be careful, what you do here, because now everyone who is blocked on Facebook is going to sue them and expect a lot of money. I mean, they probably won't get it because they're not Donald Trump. They don't need to be bribed. So, you'll have a completely different standard applied to you. But with the law, if they just kept going, Donald Trump had no chance of winning that suit. So is it fair to, in our opinion, to call it a bribe? Yeah, Zuckerberg knows he was going to win that case. And by the way, he could have picked any number. He could have picked 5 million, 10 million. 25 million is a giant number, right? So that's a nice little bribe. But if you say, hey, wait a minute, now look, most of it is going to either legal expenses. Well, first of all, Trump owed that money to his lawyers, so that's $3 million in his pocket right now. But 22 million is going to the library. Remember the Clinton Foundation? The Clinton Foundation was largely a giant scam to house their entire staff before the election. And they pretended to do charity, and the Saudis and tons of other governments, et cetera, loaded up the Clinton Foundation with a lot of money. And people say, well, it's not going to the Clintons. It went to their staff, who they then immediately migrated over to the campaign as soon as Hillary Clinton started running. And then afterwards, the Clinton Foundation hasn't been heard of. So a lot of these guys fund their, people that they want to get money to, they'll put them in their library and their foundations, et cetera, and that's how you funnel money to them. So that's how this game is played. Now, on the other hand, Meta will allow us to put this video up deeply criticizing them. So give them credit for that. You might be seeing this on Facebook now as we speak. Now, I'm giving you all the nuance here. Now, two more things that are important. When it comes to what they should have done, that's a conundrum, man. Because on the one hand, was Trump encouraging violence? In my opinion, he definitely was. He saw that they were chanting, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And he still encouraged it in the beginning, and it took him forever to tell them to stop and go home, and I can give you 1,000 other examples. And if you encourage violence, that's an excellent reason to take you down. Now, having said that, he's the president of the United States. He was the president of the United States back then when he did this stuff. He's now the president again. So it's super tough to block the leader of one of the parties. So I don't know if that's a different standard or not. It's a very difficult question if you ask me. All right, now
I actually think.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. I actually think real quick that Zuckerberg kind of handled it correctly because he lifted the suspension in February of 2023, just as like the election cycle. Well, actually, it's way well before the election cycle really started to heat up. So, yeah, like I don't have a problem with what Zuckerberg did here, and you're right. I mean, Donald Trump refused to step in for hours. He allowed the Capitol riots to go on for hours before he finally stepped in. And you mean Facebook and Meta's policy not giving him the $25 million? Correct, exactly, yes.
Yes, and so finally, why did he give him $25 million? And why does he want to ingratiate himself here? Did he really think, oh my God, I've got a guilty conscience for blocking him? No, of course not. The guilty conscience developed right after Trump won the election. Don't be ridiculous, right? So the reason that he did it is because he has so many things in front of the government. They were investigating whether Meta was a monopoly. He wants that to go away. That's a huge problem for Meta. And if he treats Trump right and gets him enough money, I mean, legal settlements, then maybe that problem goes away. And Trump has a well-known history of caring about money and making things go away for his donors. And then finally, AI is gigantic. Meta's also in that game. And the government is doing a lot, including potentially subsidizing companies that are going in that direction. So he now sees that Elon Musk, just from a financial and business perspective, was right in giving a lot of money, okay, we won't call it bribes, to Donald Trump, and that will get you a lot of goodies back, especially as everything that Elon Musk owns soared in the stock market after Trump won, because the market concluded that the government was going to give Elon Musk a lot of favors, of course, from all of our pockets. And so now Zuckerberg and the others are trying to get in on those goodies. Give me more taxpayer money.
Bingo. Yep. That's exactly right. All right, bonus episode is next. It's gonna be awesome. We have a fun video from the Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearing. We'll see you there.